Randy Orton just dropped a bombshell revelation about why WWE wrestlers actually despise Vince McMahon, and it's not a good look.
I pleaded with him, like, man, I gotta, not do as many shows. And he just looked at me and was like, oh, I need you on those shows, Randy. Mother Nature gets us all.
For years, Vince McMahon was seen as untouchable, the mastermind behind WWE's global success. But now, the curtain's being pulled back, and some of the things he's done to his top stars are finally coming to light. So what exactly did Orton reveal, and why might this be the final nail in the coffin for Vince McMahon ever stepping back into a WWE ring? Let's get into it. The revelation that shocked the wrestling world. The legendary Randy Orton, a man whose career has spanned decades under the watchful eye of former WWE chairman Vince McMahon, has finally pulled back the curtain on why so many WWE superstars have harbored resentment toward the controversial wrestling mogul. What Randy Orton has revealed isn't just another backstage rumor or speculative gossip. It's a first-hand account from someone who spent his entire professional career under McMahon's leadership. And what he's sharing sheds new light on the working conditions that WWE superstars have endured for years. Before we dive into Orton's bombshell revelations, let's set the stage for those who might be newer to WWE or unfamiliar with Randy Orton's prestigious position within the company. Randy Orton isn't just another wrestler, he's wrestling royalty, a 14-time world champion, and one of the most decorated performers in WWE history. His insights carry tremendous weight because few people have experienced the wrestling business from his vantage point. In a recent interview that sent shockwaves through the wrestling community, Orton spoke candidly about his experiences working under Vince McMahon, contrasting it with the current regime led by Triple H and Nick Khan. What he revealed paints a troubling picture of life under McMahon's leadership, one defined by grueling schedules, little regard for personal well-being, and an almost callous disregard for the wrestlers' health and family lives. It's no surprise, then, that many within the locker room grew to resent him, some even outright hating the man behind the empire. The interview was particularly significant because Randy Orton isn't known for being outspoken against WWE or its management. Throughout his career, he's been viewed as a company man, someone who has remained loyal to WWE since day one. In fact, during this very interview, Orton proudly noted that he might be the only wrestler who has worked exclusively for one company throughout his entire career. This makes his candid comments about McMahon all the more impactful. These aren't the words of a disgruntled former employee with an axe to grind, but rather the honest reflections of one of WWE's most loyal soldiers. So what exactly did Randy Orton reveal? What were the conditions that made wrestlers resent McMahon's leadership so deeply? According to Orton, there were two primary issues that caused widespread dissatisfaction: a complete disregard for work-life balance and a chaotic, stress-inducing creative process. Let's start with the work-life balance issues, which appear to have been a major point of contention. In his interview, Orton shared a particularly telling anecdote about approaching McMahon when he was 35 years old and beginning to experience serious back problems. Like any reasonable person, Orton requested a reduced schedule to allow his body time to recover.
Vince McMahon had us, he had Raw and Monday Night Live where, everyone's, doesn't care if he had kids. I came to him when I was 35 and my back really started going, and I pleaded with him, like, man, I gotta not do as many shows, maybe do half the tour and be able to recover. And he just looked at me and was like, oh, I need you on those shows, Randy. Mother Nature gets us all.
McMahon's response was shocking in its dismissiveness. Oh, I need you on those shows, Randy. Mother Nature gets us all. This callous reply reveals a disturbing lack of concern for the physical well-being of the talent. It's worth noting that professional wrestling is an extraordinarily demanding physical profession. Wrestlers perform what amounts to a highly athletic stunt show multiple nights per week, with little time for recovery between performances. The toll this takes on the human body cannot be overstated. What makes this revelation particularly troubling is that Orton wasn't asking for special treatment. He was simply requesting a reduced schedule due to legitimate health concerns. His back was really starting to go, as he put it. And yet, McMahon's response was essentially to tell him to push through the pain, with a fatalistic reference to aging that did nothing to address Orton's very real physical issues. Later in the interview, Orton doubled down on his thoughts, making it clear that while he respects Vince McMahon for the opportunities he was given, he's not exactly mourning his departure. In fact, Orton admitted he was relieved to see a change at the top.
Off the top of my head, and listen, I love Vince. He gave me so many opportunities, but I think it was kind of time for him to move on. It's unfortunate that it happened in the way that it happened.
This is a remarkably candid admission from Orton. While he acknowledges his gratitude for the opportunities McMahon provided him, he doesn't shy away from criticizing the former WWE chairman's complete disregard for wrestlers' personal lives. Under McMahon's leadership, wrestlers apparently missed important family events routinely. Birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all sacrificed to the altar of WWE's relentless schedule. Imagine missing your child's birthday or being absent during Christmas morning year after year, not because of an occasional work emergency, but because your boss simply doesn't care if you had kids. This callous disregard for family life would be considered unacceptable in most workplaces, and it's particularly jarring coming from someone like McMahon, who frequently emphasized the importance of family in WWE's corporate messaging. But the concerns about work-life balance weren't limited to missing family events. Orton went on to describe how McMahon's response to his back problems essentially forced him to choose between his health and his career.
I need you on those shows, Randy. Mother Nature gets us all. And to hear that and go, okay, well, I guess there's no other, thing I can do other than just, wear myself out down to the nub until, I can't walk anymore for this man.
The image Orton paints here is disturbing, being worked to the point where he can't walk anymore, just to satisfy McMahon's demands. It's no wonder that wrestlers would resent this approach to management. They were essentially being asked to sacrifice their long-term health and well-being for the short-term gain of the company, with little regard for what would happen to them once their bodies gave out. This revelation is particularly significant when we consider the long history of wrestlers suffering from serious health issues in their later years. The industry has a troubling legacy of performers dying young or living with debilitating injuries after their careers end. McMahon's attitude, as described by Orton, suggests that he viewed this not as a problem to be solved, but simply as the cost of doing business. Mother Nature gets us all, after all. The work-life balance issues were just one aspect of why wrestlers might have harbored resentment toward McMahon. According to Orton's revelations, the creative process under McMahon was also a significant source of stress and frustration for the roster. Unlike the current regime, which plans storylines months and months in advance, McMahon was known for making last-minute changes to shows, sometimes just hours before they were set to air live. Orton described the creative environment under McMahon as flying by the seat of our pants, noting that changes would often be made at 5 p.m. East Coast time, just 2 to 3 hours before airtime. This chaotic approach to creative planning created an immensely stressful work environment for the performers, who had little time to prepare for their segments. In the entertainment industry, preparation is crucial. Actors typically have weeks or months to memorize their lines and develop their characters. Professional wrestlers under McMahon, however, were often given new dialogue, match outcomes, or storyline directions with just hours to adjust, all while preparing for physically demanding performances that carried real risks of injury. Imagine being told just hours before going live, on a broadcast watched by millions, that everything you'd planned for had suddenly changed. Now you're scrambling to memorize new lines, adjust to a new match structure, and still expected to deliver a flawless performance. It's the kind of pressure that would wear anyone down. Add that to an already brutal schedule, and it's easy to see why so many wrestlers started to burn out, and why more than a few began to resent the man calling the shots. The culture of pain and sacrifice. One of the most troubling aspects of McMahon's reign, as revealed through Orton's comments and corroborated by numerous other sources, was the culture of sacrifice that permeated the company. Wrestlers were expected to prioritize WWE above all else, above their health, above their families, above their very well-being. This expectation created an environment where performers felt they had no choice but to push themselves beyond their limits, often with devastating consequences. Many wrestlers have children who grow up barely seeing their parents. They miss first steps, first words, school performances, sports games, all the moments that most parents treasure. And unlike other professions that might require travel, such as military service or certain business roles, these absences weren't treated as necessary sacrifices to be minimized and accommodated. Rather, according to Orton, McMahon simply doesn't care if you had kids. This callous attitude toward family life would naturally breed resentment among performers who valued their relationships outside the ring. And it's worth noting that many wrestlers have spoken about the toll that the WWE lifestyle takes on marriages and partnerships. The divorce rate among professional wrestlers is notoriously high, and stories of broken families are all too common in the industry. The stress of constant travel, physical pain, and separation from loved ones creates an environment where personal relationships become incredibly difficult to maintain. McMahon's apparent disregard for this reality only exacerbated the problem, making it even harder for wrestlers to build stable, healthy lives outside of work. This creative chaos was particularly frustrating for wrestlers who took pride in their craft. Many WWE performers joined the company with dreams of telling compelling stories and creating memorable moments for fans. Under McMahon's leadership, however, they often found themselves at the mercy of his whims, unable to build the kind of long-term, satisfying storylines that both they and the fans craved. The combination of physical sacrifice, personal sacrifice, and creative frustration created an environment ripe for resentment. And while Orton was diplomatic in his criticisms, other wrestlers have been far more explicit in their condemnation of McMahon's management style. Take CM Punk, for example, whose departure from WWE in 2014 was marked by scathing criticisms of McMahon and the company culture. Punk alleged that WWE's medical team neglected a potentially fatal staph infection, which they misdiagnosed as a fatty deposit. He also claimed to have worked through broken ribs and concussions without adequate care, reflecting the same disregard for wrestler health that Orton alluded to. Punk's grievances extended to creative frustrations as well, as he felt stifled and undervalued despite being one of the company's top performers. And perhaps most tellingly, he revealed that he was officially terminated from WWE on his wedding day, an act he perceived as a deliberate slight. Another example of McMahon's apparent disregard for wrestlers' personal lives. Bret Hart, another WWE legend, has been even more explicit in his criticism of McMahon, particularly following the infamous Montreal Screwjob incident. Hart has publicly stated that he has zero respect for McMahon, a sentiment that stems not just from personal grievances, but from a broader critique of McMahon's impact on the wrestling industry. Scott Steiner, known for his outspoken nature, has been similarly harsh in his assessment of McMahon's leadership. Steiner publicly criticized WWE's creative direction under McMahon, referring to the product as horrible and expressing disdain for McMahon's vision for the company.
Vince did a lot of good for wrestling. He also did a lot of bad for wrestling. When he bought WCW, he didn't realize that there was two different organizations that had two separate audiences, and he pretty much squashed WCW. So he kind of, wrestling around. And
even more troubling are the allegations that have emerged in recent years regarding McMahon's personal conduct. In January 2024, former WWE employee Janelle Grant filed a lawsuit accusing McMahon of sexual assault and trafficking, claims that, if true, would paint an even more disturbing picture of the former WWE chairman. According to Grant's lawsuit, specific incidents include a 2020 incident where McMahon allegedly defecated on her, and forced encounters in 2021 with WWE executive John Laurinaitis. These allegations led to McMahon's resignation from TKO, the parent company formed by WWE's merger with UFC, on January 26, 2024. Orton himself has expressed being torn about these allegations, stating in an interview with Sports Illustrated, "If these allegations are true, then it's some horrible shit right there. I'm torn. It's hard." This response reflects the complex relationship many wrestlers have with McMahon, gratitude for opportunities mixed with disgust at his alleged behavior. The allegations against McMahon extend beyond Grant's lawsuit. In June 2022, WWE's board investigated a $3 million hush money payment, ultimately finding that McMahon had made $12 million in payments to 4 women, 2 of whom alleged sexual misconduct. This investigation prompted his initial retirement as CEO in July 2022, though he would later return as executive chairman in January 2023. In January 2025, the SEC announced that McMahon had agreed to pay a $400,000 fine and reimburse $1.3 million to WWE for false accounting related to undisclosed NDAs, including a 2019 payment of $7.5 million and the 2022 payment of $3 million. These financial penalties further tarnished McMahon's legacy and raised questions about his ethical conduct as WWE's leader. The historical controversies surrounding McMahon extend even further back. In the 1990s, he faced a steroid abuse scandal that resulted in his indictment on conspiracy and drug distribution charges. While he was ultimately acquitted in 1994, the scandal raised serious questions about the culture of substance abuse that existed within WWE under his leadership. McMahon has also been accused of covering up for wrestlers involved in serious misconduct. For example, he allegedly told Steve Austin's then-wife Deborah not to discuss domestic violence charges publicly in the late 1990s, prioritizing the company's public image over accountability for harmful behavior. Even his creative decisions have sometimes crossed ethical lines. In 2006, McMahon pushed forward with a controversial live TV segment featuring Lita and Edge that made many wrestlers uncomfortable. While the segment boosted ratings, it came at the cost of creating a hostile work environment for the performers involved. Given this history of controversial behavior and questionable decisions, it's perhaps not surprising that many wrestlers came to resent McMahon's leadership. The culture of sacrifice he fostered, combined with his apparent disregard for ethical considerations, created an environment where performers felt exploited, undervalued, and disrespected. But how have things changed since his departure? A new era dawns, the Triple H revolution. In his interview, Randy Orton didn't just criticize McMahon's management style, he also offered a striking contrast with the current regime led by Triple H, Paul Levesque, and Nick Khan. His description of the changes under the new leadership paints a picture of a company in transformation, one that is finally prioritizing the well-being of its performers after decades of sacrificing it at the altar of entertainment. Orton was remarkably candid about his relief at McMahon's departure, stating,
"All the opportunities he gave me, it's nice having him out of there, and it's nice having his son-in-law, Triple H, running the game. Nick Khan's great. Everybody with TKO that's come in, stepped in, they seem to get it."
This statement is striking in its honesty. Despite acknowledging his gratitude for the opportunities McMahon provided, Orton makes it clear that he's relieved McMahon is no longer in charge. The phrase, "it's nice having him out of there," leaves little room for ambiguity. Orton, and presumably many other wrestlers, believe that WWE is better off without McMahon at the helm. What makes the current regime different, according to Orton, is their understanding of the importance of work-life balance. Under Triple H and Nick Khan, wrestlers are apparently given more time to be with their families for important events like birthdays and holidays, a stark contrast to McMahon's approach, which Orton described as not caring if you had kids. Orton elaborated on the differences between the two regimes, emphasizing the more humane approach of the current leadership.
And it's a different era. Yeah. It's a different era.
The RKO and TKO.
You're right, exactly, like you said. But I think the way that they care for talent nowadays and make sure that talent's good, and if they need a little bit of a break, we're only human, they get it. Most of the time.
The phrase "we're only human" is particularly telling. It suggests that under McMahon, wrestlers were not treated as humans with normal needs and limitations, but rather as assets to be exploited for maximum return. The new regime, by contrast, recognizes the humanity of the performers and accommodates their needs accordingly. This shift in management philosophy represents a fundamental change in WWE's culture. For decades, the company operated under a philosophy that prioritized the show above all else, above the health of the performers, above their personal lives, above their long-term well-being. Wrestlers were expected to sacrifice everything for the sake of entertainment, regardless of the toll it took on their bodies and relationships. Under Triple H and Nick Khan, however, that philosophy appears to be changing. The acknowledgement that wrestlers are only human and sometimes need a little bit of a break represents a more sustainable approach to talent management. By allowing performers the time they need to rest, recover, and maintain their personal relationships, WWE is not just being more humane, it's also likely ensuring the longevity of their careers. This change in management style extends beyond work-life balance to encompass the creative process as well. According to Orton, one of the most significant improvements under the new regime is the long-term planning of storylines. While McMahon was known for making last-minute changes just hours before shows went live, Triple H apparently plans creative directions months and months in advance. This approach not only reduces stress for the performers, but also allows for more coherent, engaging storytelling. When wrestlers know where their characters are headed and have time to prepare for their roles, they can deliver better performances. This benefits everyone: the performers, who can take pride in their work; the company, which can produce a higher quality product; and most importantly, the fans, who get to enjoy more compelling stories and matches. The cultural shift within WWE since McMahon's departure is reflected in more than just Orton's comments. It's visible in the product itself, which many fans and critics agree has improved significantly under Triple H's creative direction. Storylines are more consistent, characters are more fully developed, and the in-ring product often feels more authentic and less contrived. But perhaps the most significant change is in the treatment of the performers themselves. Under Triple H, wrestlers appear to have more input into their characters and storylines, more flexibility in their schedules, and more support for their physical and mental well-being. This has resulted in a roster that seems more engaged, more motivated, and ultimately more capable of delivering the kind of performances that fans want to see. The contrast between McMahon's approach and Triple H's is particularly interesting given their personal relationship. Triple H, whose real name is Paul Levesque, is not just a former wrestler and current executive. He's also McMahon's son-in-law, married to Stephanie McMahon, Vince's daughter. One might expect Triple H to continue his father-in-law's management style, but instead he appears to have deliberately charted a different course. This suggests that Triple H recognized the problems with McMahon's approach and made a conscious decision to do things differently. Having experienced life as a WWE wrestler himself, Triple H likely understands the toll that the schedule takes on performers' bodies and personal lives. This first-hand experience may have informed his more humane approach to talent management. The timing of McMahon's departure and Triple H's ascension to creative control is also worth noting. McMahon resigned from TKO, WWE's parent company, in January 2024 following the filing of a lawsuit by former WWE employee Janelle Grant. The lawsuit contained disturbing allegations of sexual assault and trafficking, claims that, if true, paint an even more troubling picture of McMahon's character and conduct. Given the nature of these allegations, it's possible that McMahon's departure was not entirely voluntary. The resignation came after Slim Jim withdrew its sponsorship of the Royal Rumble due to the allegations, suggesting that there were financial pressures on TKO to distance itself from McMahon. This context adds another layer to Orton's comments about it being nice having him out of there. It's possible that many within WWE, not just the wrestlers but also executives and staff, had long been uncomfortable with McMahon's leadership, but felt powerless to challenge it. His departure, even if it came under unpleasant circumstances, may have been seen as an opportunity for positive change throughout the organization. The story of why WWE wrestlers grew to resent Vince McMahon, as revealed by Randy Orton, is ultimately a story about the human cost of entertainment. For decades, wrestlers sacrificed their bodies, their relationships, and sometimes even their lives for the sake of entertaining fans under McMahon's leadership. The toll this took on them and their families was immense, and the resentment it bred was entirely understandable. But Orton's revelations also point to a more hopeful future for WWE and its performers. Under Triple H and Nick Khan, the company appears to be moving toward a more sustainable, humane approach to talent management. By recognizing that wrestlers are only human and accommodating their needs accordingly, WWE may be able to provide the kind of work environment where performers can thrive both professionally and personally. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.